Well, I have so been looking forward to meeting my next guest, and the big day has arrived. We're in Newcastle, and I'm delighted not only to meet Elaine Power, aka Dyslexic Landlord, but also to welcome you to Property Tribes TV. And Elaine, I've come to know you so well on the forums, and you're such a wonderful contributor to Property Tribes, and it really goes back to the fact that you've been a landlord since 1982. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in property.
I was in business, running my own business as a hairdresser, and a friend of mine was literally compulsory purchased and was told to get out of a house very quickly. I helped him move. I helped him move to the Salvation Army hostel, and the long story short was we managed to get him some accommodation which was not very good, and I said to him on the spur, would you like to rent a flat with me if I bought a property for you? And that's how it started. It was me helping somebody who was in a Salvation Army hostel.
Well, that's a wonderful story and a wonderful way to actually start helping a friend. And that's almost kind of set the tone for your business going forward, hasn't it?
Exactly.
Because you really love being a landlord and you love helping people.
I think it's the most important part of the job is to be a human being and be caring. And, yes, we'll make a living at it, but we've got to remember that we're providing an accommodation which should be fit for its use, and that it gives people a place to live. It's very, very important that we get that fact right.
No, I totally agree. So you started with helping a friend out, buying them a flat. Where did you go from there?
I was running the business, and I thought, well, for a good idea to invest some money is buy some more property. I didn't really know what I was doing, to be fair, and it was in the days long before buy-to-let ever came along on the short-hold tenancies, and I just started buying property and putting people in these properties, and it was just a way of making, hopefully, a pension.
And as you mentioned, there wasn't buy-to-let mortgages
No.
then, there wasn't assured short-hold tenancies, so it was mainly done through cash purchasing here in Newcastle. And really, what you've done is you've really kind of, what I would say, come to know your patch so well, and you've built up quite a substantial portfolio, haven't you?
Yes, I have. It's certainly I'm happy with what I've built. It'll be nice to leave it to my family, obviously, as well eventually. But I think more importantly, all is a good run business. That's all I want. That's what I do. The money side is lovely to have, but it's a byproduct of doing a good business.
Yes.
If you get the fundamentals right and you're providing something that somebody wants and you're doing it to a good standard, the money will come by itself.
No, I totally agree. Now, you started out with what you call Tyneside flats. That's not something that we're familiar with down in the south.
No.
Tell us a little bit why you went for them and why they served you very well starting out.
A Tyneside flat, if you looked at it from the street, it would look like a semi-detached house. First floor and a ground floor with gardens and parking and garden walls and such like, and you have two doors, one that's on the side of the building normally that takes you to the first floor, which is a 2-bedroom flat or a 3-bedroom flat, and then the same thing in the front of the building is you have your own front door as well. So they're totally it looks like a semi-detached house but 2 flats, but you don't have the problems with leasehold. You don't have the management charges. It is your baby. You can look after it. You can repair the roof. You can do what you want to do. There's no management contract with it. Yeah.
So that's what we would call a maisonette.
Yes, I think you probably would do. They are unique to the northeast. Lots of them around, and they do rent very well because they don't have this block type of thing. They have their own gardens and their own parking spaces.
So very popular with tenants.
Very popular tenants indeed, and they're very good renters. And they're well built. Most are built from 1900s through to probably 1940, something like that. So they are quite old buildings now, but they're well built, and they do make lovely homes.
So you had your Tyneside flats, and then you kind of had a realisation that you wanted to do a bit more. Where did you go next?
The next project was actually an old 17th century mill, which I converted in Northumberland. And my mother used to say a paid lesson is much better than a taught lesson. And this mill went totally wrong. It nearly bankrupted me. It was everything that could possibly go wrong went on this, but it was an immense learning curve on how to run a project, how to run builders, what you're looking for, how to do it, literally from the ground up. And it ended up being a massive project, but it was a project which gave me a lot of knowledge. Some of it was nearly committing suicide at one point, but in general, it did turn out well. And that was a large house which I had no more use for. So at the time I remortgaged it, and I went in and then bought more buy-to-let property when I was still there, and I actually used it for a holiday home at one point. And then eventually I decided to sell it, and that was my stepping stone onto becoming a larger landlord.
Yeah. And then you kept expanding.
Yes.
And you moved on to 2-3 bed houses.
That's been done since the crash. I had an awful lot of Tyneside flats to which were bringing in a very good income. But I realised that really people wanted homes, and they wanted to stay in homes. I had bought a few houses, but I found that by buying 3-bedroom houses, people would actually make a home there and didn't want to move on again. So when the property prices dropped, I then went along and then started buying a lot more very cheap property at the time in 2007. And a lot of it was houses as opposed to flats, although I still bought flats as well.
Now, one of the kind of things that you're very keen to get across on Property Tribes is that there is a massive difference between investing in the south and investing up north. And you obviously know your area really, really well, but you do have concerns for people down south who think, you know, all that glitters is gold up here in the north.
It's literally curbstone by curbstone in the northeast of England. You can have houses on the same street that have good letting potential and are poor lets on the same street. You've got to know where you are. You've got to know what you're buying and who's going to be your customer. What is that looks very, very cheap, which would have a marvellous yield, would be an absolute nightmare to manage in a very bad area that goes along with every aspect of that bad area. So you really do need to know your streets. The streets that I buy in are the streets that I grew up in. And my mother and father had a shop, a corner shop, and there's an awful lot. I know the streets, I know the people. Even though the generations have moved on, I still know the names. And that is your knowledge of the area, I think, is vital in the northeast of England.
No, absolutely. Now, you're a very prolific contributor to Property Tribes. We've got over 55,000 members now, and you are number one. And I think that's a testament to how much wonderful knowledge that you share. And it's really because you're so passionate about what being a landlord can do for you, isn't it?
Absolutely. I love the job, and I call it a job. It's not an investment, it's my job, my living, and I really do enjoy it. I enjoy every minute of it. I enjoy the bad and the good. I enjoy meeting people, I enjoy working with people, I enjoy trying to make the homes better. And that's when, as a landlord, that you will shine, is when the phone goes and says, I have got an issue, depending on how you handle that issue, how professional you are, and how good a human being you are, that's when the person who's renting from you goes, I've got a good landlord.
No, that's wonderful. I just so agree with what you're saying there. I mean, property is a people business. We're dealing with tenants' well-being, their health, their safety, and we have to adhere to over, I think it's 180 government statutes and regulations now, and it's becoming more, and we are going to talk about that in another video with DL actually in a bit. But really, you've been a landlord since 1982. You're still battling on. You still believe in buy-to-let?
I do. I think the journey that the older landlords have had has been a journey which the younger landlords are going to struggle to copy. I think, I'm not saying the golden days have gone. The golden days haven't gone if you've got the enthusiasm and the cash to do the project. That is the biggest difference I see now, where you could start with not a lot of money and leverage up and move forward and do projects and what have you. Those days have changed. And now for somebody coming in now into the business, even in the northeast of England, you would still need a fairly strong wallet to get you on that first rung. And the days of buying it on Monday, using Magic Magnolia and remortgaging it on the Friday have gone.
Definitely.
And that will not work anymore. Those days have gone. So it all comes down to now, I believe, is how much cash you have that you can throw into the project to get that 75% mortgage, and work from there.
No, I totally agree. It's a very different game to when you started in 1982. And I guess part of your secret of success is that you have learnt, you have grown, you have adapted. I think that's your signature on Property Tribes, actually. You're always hungry for new information, and you just want to keep raising your landlord game, don't you?
You do. You've got to change. If you change, you will die. You've got to learn new ways if you're going to expand or continue in the business. We have got some major challenges. We have got some horrendous Section 24 to deal with. And then we come into well, do we go to companies or do we stay in private hands or personal hands? And you've got all these questions that are coming along, which all new landlords and landlords who have got experience now are now scratching their heads and thinking, which way do I jump with this? And it's not. There's no hard and fast rule. There's no one size fits all. It all comes down to what you understand and what you think's the best way to do it.
Well, again, I'm singing from the same hymn sheet, DL. You know, some people might say, "Oh, you're a bit negative." I personally don't think you are at all. I think you're just realistic, and anybody new coming into the sector, you know, they've got to respect the elders who've been doing it for 30 odd years like yourself, because you know, that experience is absolutely vital. And those coming into the sector now, you know, people such as yourself, your kind of hindsight can be their foresight. And I think it's really valuable that somebody with your experience is so engaged with the landlord community. And, you know, you go to landlord meetings, you've been part of the consultation here against licensing in Newcastle. You're really, really into everything to do with the sector, aren't you? Totally,
100%. It's my job. It's what I do for a living. So that was my 40 hours a week is doing this. Nobody, when a young person or a person comes into buy to let and you see this on Property Tribes, they come in very, very gushing, very, very, very enthusiastic. And none of us don't like being told no. And I know when I started out, people would say to me, things would say, "Oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that." This old 17th century mill was exactly that. People said to me, "You're absolutely mad." And halfway through it, I thought I was. And I think they were right. But if you've got the fire in your belly to do this, and it's what you want to do, and you really have got to want it, you can still be very successful, although the world has changed. Indeed, and that is something that we will be addressing in our next video with Elaine, aka DL. But for now, thank you so much for joining me here on Property Tribes. Lovely to meet you, and so inspiring to hear your story and hear how committed you are to your tenants and your properties even after all this time. Well, yes, it pays the bills. Well, we'll be talking again to DL in another video, but for now, thank you for watching. And if you've got any questions for DL, as always, she's on Property Tribes, normally along with me, one of the first people at 7 o'clock in the morning, sharing information and things that have interested her from the sector. So she'd be more than happy to answer your questions, wouldn't you? I will, absolutely, as normal. It's so lovely talking to you.